Welcome to The Accurate Perspective, a podcast on local politics in Yakima. We take politics to a whole new level. Factual reporting, sources you can trust, and best of all, no BS. Unlike other news organizations, we won't mislead you or manipulate the news to our advantage. It's facts first, and the truth shall set you free. Join our hosts, Matt Brown, Lindsay Wehrmeyer, and Dave Mullen, as we do what we do best, and that's dunk on all our competitors.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for episode 11 of the Accurate Perspective podcast. Today we have Chris Corry on here with us because our other lovely host, Dave, is not here today. But we are excited for Chris to be here today. We're talking the election results. We kind of just had an election on Tuesday, but it's kind of been dragging out across the state all week. And we're getting closer to finding out who's going to win these things. Hopefully, tonight's drops will be giving us a little bit more clear perspective on those things. So, guys, what's been the most challenging piece, though, in this election?
Well, I'll tell you, as an elected and a candidate, I think the most challenging piece, and we were talking a little bit about it before we went live, is the delay in reporting the numbers. And a lot of that also is fueled by people who turn in their ballots on the day of. I know that, some people do it because they feel like it's an election day. This is the day I'm voting. But those ballots don't end up getting counted for 2 or 3 days later, and it can really stress out and frustrate both the candidates as well as the campaigns as they try to figure out what the heck's going on in their race.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, I know last year, I didn't realize this when I ran, I was told by the county auditor here in Yakima was like, anything that comes in past like 9 a.m. on election day, we don't count for like 2-3 days afterwards because there's a signature verification piece. There's all of these steps before we even put it into a machine for tabulation. And, the other piece of it that's really slow is on election night, we see a huge ballot drop come in, right? So it's like 21,000, 30,000, certain counties. And then the rest of the week, it's 1,000 ballots, 2,000 ballots. It's a little frustrating for the people watching. At why can't we just count? But I guess the good part is they are taking their time, making sure they're counted right. But I guess for me, one of the biggest challenges has been the sheer amount of Republicans we've had running in multiple races. I think I said this actually earlier in the week on KIT was, if you look across the state, almost every race besides King County, where they have multiple Democrats running, we had 4 to 6 Republicans or more in some areas, like in the senator race and Secretary of State race, running for a single position. And what you end up happening is you start splitting votes where the incumbents that you might not necessarily agree with, that's why there's so many people running, ends up getting in. And I mean, I think that's what we're looking at right now with the congressional fourth.
Well, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lindsay. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Real quick. So someone who's not in politics, I did vote day of because I was so overwhelmed by my choices. And I just felt like I didn't know who to choose for Congress. And so it just took me I wanted up until the last minute to decide. And so as just your basic person voting out there, it's so overwhelming. And I think that's maybe why people turn it in late or maybe don't vote at all. There's too many options.
Yeah.
I think that could really throw people off if there is, because we had a lot in a lot of races here this time around.
Yeah, I mean, in 2020 we had 18 people running for governor that were Republicans. It was not our best foot forward. And it frustrates people, right? Because they sit there and they go, we just put a bunch of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. And my candidate, who is probably one of, might have the most fundraising, might have the most, all of that going on for him, has now just been primaried out because we've split the votes 18 ways. That's a frustration that a lot of voters are feeling right now, especially in the fourth and in the congressional third. But what other things are we seeing right now, Chris, that you were talking about on voter turnout?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm, I obviously am very invested in this, and I tend to watch it very closely. With a lot of those late ballot returns, we're seeing, or the late reporting, I should say, we're seeing a lot of Republican gains. And here's back to why you shouldn't hold your ballot, and you shouldn't wait. So election night, Democrats took a victory lap Tuesday night. They were like, there's no red wave in Washington state. Look at how great we're doing. And now we're coming back. We're clawing back. In some cases, we flipped, especially yesterday, a lot of them. And that takes a lot of wind out of our sails, right? As a party, as an organization that's trying to put seats, win back seats so we can restore some sanity in Olympia. That really stresses us out. And I'll tell you one more thing that people don't realize. We don't have it as much in Yakima County because our districts are a little more safe, but in some of those areas where it's real swingy and you have a lot of money pouring in to run those races, you're now having campaigns spending money to try to get you to vote, even if you've already voted but just haven't turned in your ballot, because we have what's called matchbacks. And Matt, you're very familiar with those, where you can go in and with this voter data that the parties have collected, they kind of identify you as a number essentially between a very, very conservative Republican and a very liberal Democrat. And so when they get those matchbacks and they see you haven't turned in their ballot and you're their ideal candidate, they're going to keep bugging you. They're going to do robocalls, texts, emails, campaign mailers. But as soon as you turn in your ballot and they see a matchback, they're going to leave you alone because they're going to spend their money elsewhere. So we also have this case now where we're spending money to try to get people to vote that maybe have already filled out their ballot and just haven't turned it in, because we're trying to get our numbers up. And so fortunately for us, the trend is swinging really, really, really strong towards the Republicans right now. But it was definitely not the night we were hoping for initially Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, this whole election season has been trying to flip the House and the Senate at our legislature, and it wasn't. It kind of took a lot of wind out of our sails in the Republican Party. The other piece was looking at two congressional races for that were very hotly contested, which was the congressional third and congressional fourth. Both of those seats, because of the incumbents not necessarily being aligned with Donald Trump in impeaching him, voting to impeach him, have actually, you had everyone and their mamas signing up to run against those incumbents. And there was only two Trump endorsed candidates in those areas. And yet still that, I mean, unlike the rest of the country where I think Trump is actually 194 and 14 across the country in endorsements, right now in the state of Washington, I actually told a couple of the guys who got endorsed by Trump, I said, I personally don't know if I would have want to have been endorsed in this state by Trump, because I don't know if that actually helps you here as it does in other parts of the country. But because it does split your vote. People start alienating you inside the own Republican Party because they're not endorsed by someone, right? And
Sure.
so then it makes it harder to actually pull out those guys to pull out of that race, because now they're just in it because of that. Which goes to my next point, is jungle primary. A lot of people don't understand what that means. They still don't. It was, it's been about 20 years now that we've been in this jungle primary piece. And I don't feel like Republicans have done well to adapt to it. I feel like Democrats, this is very much played to their advantage. They put one candidate in and they just go all in on that one candidate. And whether they 100% agree or not, they're doing it.
Yep.
And whereas for our party, it's not so. And so in a jungle primary, let's Lindsay, probably, do you know what a jungle primary is?
I do not.
Chris, why don't you explain it?
So, unlike most other states, we're an open primary system. So you can vote for whoever you want in a primary. Other states, you either are, most other states, I should say, you either register as a Republican or Democrat, and in your primary, you get a Republican or Democrat ballot, which lets you pick from a series of Republican candidates in various offices. And then whoever essentially the voters within that party select becomes your nominee for the general. Here, you can have as many people vote, as many people run, and you vote for whoever you want. And what that does is you don't need a big majority to make it forward through to the general. I mean, if you look at the third congressional district, one of the things that the Democrats did really well there were two main Democrats that were going to run. They had announced, they had started fundraising, they were actively out campaigning. It was Marie, the nominee, who's there now, and there was another gentleman who I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But the party came together and basically said, if we do this, we will almost guarantee two Republicans into the general. And so one of them agreed to step out, and they got behind one candidate. And she's now the front. I mean, technically the front runner, right? If you add up all the Republican votes, we've got over 50% there. But you've essentially, they've said, we realize in order for us to get through to the primary or to the general, we need to have one person. Flip side, and another example of how this has hurt us is in the Secretary of State's race. We had a couple Republicans run, nobody was coordinating. And now it looks like it's going to be a Democrat and an independent, and there will be no Republican option on the ballot in November. Lindsay and I have had this conversation. I think we wanted to talk about it today. Mm-hmm. And Matt, you kind of alluded to it a minute ago. Democrats and Republicans tend to think a little bit differently. I would say conservatives, Republicans are more independent minded. I always make the joke that in Olympia, in my caucus, we could have a bill that we were all going to vote yes on. And if somebody came in and said, you have to vote yes on this, this is you're required to do this as a House Republican, probably more than half of us would vote no on the bill just because you told me I had to do it, right? Because we're independent, we're free thinkers. It's like, don't tell me that. I'm going to go do what I want to do, even if I was going to support it. That's just a way to say no. You're not going to tell me what to do. And I see a lot of that in county and statewide politics. We tend to get off on our own tangent, and it's about us versus about, okay, how are we advancing our core set of values and principles so that we can be effective in governance, whether it's on the state, county, or city level. So yeah, that is a long answer to your question.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's important though, because like people are seeing these other states also having their primaries right now, and like in Arizona, for example, they had a GOP nominee, Carrie Lake, win or projected to win that governor GOP piece, not the governor's seat. And that's important as well for a lot of folks, because they go, oh, she won governor, or, oh, no, they actually had party specific primaries where, the Democrat, Katie Hobbs, is moving through, and then the Republican Carrie Lake is moving through, and they will face each other in the general, which is what Washington used to be back in the day. And we just haven't adapted, in my opinion, as a Republican. So that leads me to my next piece is I kind of want to have a family meeting here with Republicans. in the world that I live in, when you have family meetings, that's where you air your dirty laundry. You figure out, what, oh man, yeah, brother said that. Yeah. Okay. Where's the truth? Let's figure out where the truth is, and how do we move forward? Because how do we get changes in place in the Republican Party so we can stop doing this to ourselves? Like, we are literally doing this to ourselves.
Sure.
And one of the ideas that I'm going to try to push home is doing some sort of an internal primary at the Republican level, at the state level, at least for our congressional and state legislative seats, and maybe senator seats as well. But because there's a way to do it where we could actually focus in on county. So let's take the congressional fourth, for example. We have 8 counties in that area. Each county has at least 100 PCOs or more in each county. We could say, hey, county chairs, we want you to hold a fun thing in April 15th, for example. Come together, meet with your PCOs, and do an official poll on these candidates, right? Here's all these candidates that are running for the 4th. Figure out who's the top one for them, right? And that's 8 separate counties, right? So they're going to do it differently. They're going to vote for candidates differently. They're going to figure out who is their guy or gal that push through. And then what the state party could do is actually on, let's say 2 weeks later, on the 30th of April, we could say, we're at the state committee, we're going to send delegates from each county. And we're going to say, hey, the state committee man, state committee woman, and the chair, you guys, almost like electors, like we do in the presidential election, you're going to go cast a vote for our county. And none of these other counties know kind of what this looks like, right? And you're going to go cast a vote at the state level. And in that piece, you're going to be able to go, okay, this person got the most votes per se out of those 8 counties. So now someone asked, well, how do you get those other guys to bow out? Well, I think it's a little accountability piece, right? You're not going to be put on this ballot unless you agree to this, right? So if you don't win this 8 county for, let's take an example, congressional 4th, if you don't agree to bow out, if you lose this piece, then you're not going to be on the ballot and we just won't vote for you. You're just not going to be there. And hopefully people will understand the importance of that, right? One, it forces candidates to actually go and campaign all 8 counties in the 4th, not just rely upon name recognition, not just rely upon hitting Yakima, Benton, and Franklin, for example, those 3 major populous, the more northern counties, they feel a little neglected at times. And if you take this even to a bigger level at like the governor, right? If you took that even bigger at that seat, man, I mean, that would actually force Republican governor candidates to actually campaign all of those counties and actually push them to know these counties and know these PCOs. And I say PCOs because those PCOs are the ones that are at the most grassroots level of the people of Washington. They're the ones talking to their neighbors. They're the ones getting ballots and saying, hey, do you know who you're voting for? They're door knocking. They're doing all of that stuff. And so that's like they are literally on the ground. So let's listen to what they have to say. And I think this is an interesting solution because we can't keep pushing forward. Democrats have adapted. I feel like Republicans are living in 1992 still. Like we're still trying to like figure out this thing, and the cream will rise to the top, and it's like, but it's not. And we keep losing, and we keep getting beat by our own team. We're not even getting beat by the Democrats.
I think you bring up some interesting points, right? And you're essentially creating your own internal county or Republican primary system to try to clean up some of that as you go into an open primary. It's not a bad idea. I'm sure there's lots of stuff to work out in those details. But if you look at it, there's a couple things that I see we need help with. We need county parties to provide, and this isn't a knock on Yakima County or any other county, but county parties functions, they need to be a working political party. It's not, we have social events, we have social stuff, but we're there to get Republicans elected. And if that's our slated mission, it starts at the nonpartisan races because the Democrats do a really good job at recruiting local candidates and then building them up so they have that experience all the way to the top. And there needs to be a financial component to it. Money is an unfortunate reality in politics. That's how you get your message out. It's how you can connect with voters. And having purse strings to go along with that really would help. You're not going to stop everything, right? But I think that you're going to help solve some problems there. The other thing that we've got to be careful of is we've got to be careful of our purity tests. I'll tell you, I just got an award from the American Conservative Union, right? They do the ACU. They gave me a Conservative Achievement Award this year, which I was very thankful for. But I've had people yell at me for issues where they're like, "You're not conservative enough," and I'm like, "Okay, well, nobody's going to be exactly like you are, and we've got to be careful, right? We've got to have our core principles. These are things we're all in agreement on, But we have to let people have room to have their own individual thought within there and not just castigate each other. Because I'll tell you that that's the other thing that the Democrats do a really good job of is they may have different, and I've seen it in Olympia, they'll have very differing views, but they get in the room and they hammer it out together and they almost always come out in a unified voice on it. And that plays to their advantage.
Yeah. I mean, other changes too that I think, the Republicans really need to figure out is a lot of people don't trust trust election systems right now because of what, may or may not have transpired in 2020. They're frustrated. They don't trust it. I mean, that I think speaks to why they all voted on the last day, right?
Sure.
They're least amount of time that people have their hands on my ballot, the better, in their mind. And I just feel like, if I can speak anything to Republicans, if right now we had 27%, actually 31% as of today,
Yep.
turnout across the state, right? And you're talking less than a third of the state's population, voting population, is governing the state right now.
Correct.
And that's a huge problem. And so when Republicans talk about they're complaining, they're upset, I'm like, put your money where your mouth is. Did you vote? Because
Exactly.
I don't think you did, because it's not in there.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
we know with our modeling that in Republican counties, Eastern Washington counties, if we had 5 to 8% more turnout, we would actually be flipping statewide seats much easier. But we've constantly heard the message, your vote doesn't count, or it's just on the west side. And I'm like, no, you still need to show up. Even if you think you're going to lose, you still need to show up because it's important that your voice is heard. Frankly, I think you have a responsibility to vote in this country if you have that right.
Right. Well, here in Yakima County, Matt, I think 31% was statewide, but Yakima's like less than 24%. And from what I
up to
saw,
30. We're up
we
to
are
30
as of
now.
I looked today,
As of-
so they must have updated it.
Yes, they
But,
did. We're up to 30, which is still not good.
Right. Well, and also we were third lowest for the state as of this morning. So unless that changed, we were one of the lowest voter turnout for the whole state. So I don't know why Yakima would be lower, unless it's just because we're more Republicans, so our votes are coming in later. But I don't know why.
We're still at 24, Chris. It's just we got 30,000 votes in, so we're still.
Oh,
at
you know what?
24.
I'm looking at the ballot return stats, which shows the percentage as of today is 30.
There's
a separate
good
form in there.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one I look at to try to figure out where it's trending. So, but you're right. I mean, our numbers are bad. We need to be knocking on our doors, especially, and I say this as a PCO. I know I need to do a better job of engaging with people within that precinct to make sure they're turning in their ballots, especially when you have good candidates, right? I mean, we want to help them win.
Right. And, someone asked, like, well, is it because voting is difficult? Good grief. I'm like, could you make it any easier? I don't know. Like, literally, you don't have to leave your home. You don't have to. I mean, most people even have mailboxes right outside their house, so they don't even have to walk to the road.
Yeah. Chris, why do you think it is that there's such a low voter turnout? Do you have some theories?
I think part of it is apathy. My vote doesn't count. My vote won't matter. The West Side controls everything. I think that's a part of it. I think that, when you're not engaged, you're not inclined to vote. I mean, every person I talk to will complain about inflation and everything. And I'm like, well, what are you doing to solve that? Like, who are you putting in power to make these policies so we're not printing money like it's going out of style and just, wrecking the economy? So I don't know. To me, frankly, for me, voting means that I'm accountable for what's going on. And I can at least say if there's problems out there, yeah, I was for that or against that. And, we can get in there and fix it, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, when I was out door knocking last year, the last 2 weeks of the election, as I was going to people's doors, so many people were like, oh, yeah, the ballot. I still haven't even got that in. Yeah, like we've almost made it too easy, is my opinion. Like,
we print the election date on there. We give you paid return envelopes. We send it to your house. Like, yeah, you're correct. The most difficult part to vote here is if you want to take it to a ballot box, and that means you have to drive it there versus putting it in the mail.
Right. Which I just feel like we just almost made it too easy. So it's becomes out of sight, out of mind for a
Yeah.
lot of people. You know,
I
it's
just
like,
I really think the choices make it really hard though. Like if we did your idea, Matt, and everyone knew, like when I get this, I know I'm voting for this candidate. I had multiple people private messaging me going, who do I pick? I don't know. Like, who are we all going for? And I'm like, we're all not going for any particular candidate. So
Yep.
pick whoever you want, because it's going to be Newhouse and White. I mean, for Congress, I couldn't see there be, there's no other outcome that could have been.
well, and that's, I think, very important piece is why, like, if we did this system, you could actually, I mean, even so, let's say these guys, like 3 of them bow out, and one guy's a rebel, and he's like, I'm gonna still keep going through. That's now we only have 3 Republicans running, right? Versus 6. So you're not splitting the vote as near as amount, and so I think that's really, going forward. I mean, especially if Republicans want any hope in the world to actually try to take back the governor's seat in 2024, they have got to get a head start on this. They have to change their thinking, adapt. It's not 1992 anymore. We don't have a primary with just GOP. Now, some people go, why don't we just do that? Why don't we just go back to not having a jungle primary? That was actually said at the legislature, wasn't it, Chris?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could change it. And, if there's other ballot integrity security measures that we can put in place to help people feel more, that their vote is safe and secure. I think a lot of us, at least on the Republican side, are open to it.
But we got to get you there first.
Yeah, we got to get you there. I know. And I'm hoping, we're still hopeful that we're going to pick up seats this time around. But, the red wave doesn't come unless all the Republicans actually show up and vote, even in the primary. Now, I will venture a guess that we'll see a very active general with far more competitive numbers and turnout. And I had the honor of listening to a political consultant speak the other day, who was connected to the Trump White House. And one of her comments that struck me the most was that the best way for us to get, because I think Republicans have a winning message, especially today in today's day and age. Public safety. What are we going to do to fix crime? What are we going to do to help in homelessness? What is that? And all those effects that come along with that. And those things, we have a winning message, but we need to do a better job of coming to people and not just bashing our opponent and running clever ads with them in a black and white photo with the ominous voice talking about that vote. And my thing is come out and say what you're for, and you connect with people and you say, here's what we're for, and you bring that message out and you get people excited to come and vote. And so they're connecting. Okay, if I'm voting for Chris Corry, I'm voting for him because he is going to return police pursuits. He's going to take the handcuffs off the police and put them back on the criminals where they belong. And even if he's not the majority, he's going to fight to fix that stuff. That's who I'm voting for. And we have really good messages, and it speaks to Republicans and it speaks to independents. And frankly, it speaks to a lot of Democrats who are feeling very lost right now because their party is, frankly, on a lot of issues, gone off the deep end, so they don't recognize it anymore. Right. So that's how we're going to do it. And I think we still have a shot here in the general. The numbers are still looking good. They're trending the right way. So, I'm hoping by today, and then if not Monday or Tuesday, we'll know kind of where we sit.
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting point too, because there was a lot of negative ad campaign dollars spent in both CD3 and CD4. That actually kind of upset a lot of Republicans on the two incumbents really starting to get pretty nasty against their competitors. I was actually surprised it didn't do the opposite, right? It actually helped, because people get kind of tired of that nonsense, and they don't like feeling like they're being manipulated. And I feel like negative campaigns kind of push that. They kind of make you feel like it's like a psychological warfare almost in your brain. You're like, do I feel this same way, or am I now feeling this because I just watched this?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a little different on state elections than it is on the federal. The FEC rules for for federal campaigns allows these groups to set up super PACs that aren't necessarily even connected with candidates, but they go in and support candidates they like. So down in CD3, there was a bunch of ads that were done by this group that actually probably likes Jamie. Again, it's all convoluted. They haven't had a report yet, so we don't know who's there, but they were propping up Heidi St. John, talking about how she's the conservative leader you want down there. Well, that was only to just try to pull Kent voters from Heidi, or pull Kent voters to Heidi to help, make sure Jamie goes through. And I don't like that. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans do it. These super PACs do it. I'm not a big fan of it. I actually like our state's public disclosure rules. So if you go to pdc.wa.gov, you can see all the money we raise. Additionally, you can we have to report, or the political action groups that spend money in these races have to report what they're spending independently of the candidates on. So if, let's say, the Realtors Association did a mailer against me, even though they wouldn't, so it's a bad example. They did a mailer for me. You would actually see, not only on the Realtors data, but you would see on mine independent expenditures both for and against me. So if you go look at my opponent now for this race, Fuse Votes, which is a progressive get out the vote effort, they spent money sending out mailers with her on it. So they have to report that. So you can actually see all that data. So it's not as hidden. It's way more transparent. And I agree. I had several people come up to me at the Lincoln Day picnic in Glenwood a couple weeks ago, telling me how frustrated they were with the negative ads. But I mean, clearly they're effective because people still do them, right? I mean, even though I hear nobody says, "Oh, I love negative ads," but they seem to work.
Well, and it's like, aren't you running on the issues? Don't you have solutions, not just, poking at one another? I think that was the one thing that I started to really, if a candidate in the congressional force started bashing on another candidate, I was like, all right, I'm done. I don't like you anymore. I'm not saying I don't like you. I'm not going to vote for you.
Because you're not telling me why I should elect you. You're telling me why you don't like the other people.
Right. And, an old friend of mine used to say, when you're running for office, it's not the people, it's not your competitors that you're running against. You're running for the position. Yep. And you need to be all about running for that position and not all of these other things. And it gets real easy for candidates to just start sniping at one another and taking bullets. And it's just bad. It's just bad politics to do that. So, well, I'm going to take a 2-minute break or a 30-second break for our show sponsor. And then we're going to come back and actually show you some results here briefly. And then we'll be done. We're wrapping this up. So I'm just going to take a little second break here and we'll be right back. This show is sponsored by Mac Daddy Coffee Roasters. If you haven't been there before, go check them out. It's down at 28 North 1st Street, and tell them Accurate Perspective sent you. You guys, this is a great local coffee shop. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. We couldn't do this without you. Again, go check them out, Mac Daddy Coffee Roasters. All right, guys, thanks for hanging with us, and we are going to go through some of these results because I told you we were, so we're going to do it. And we're going to start with the big CD4 race, and we've already been talking about how it kind of split all sorts of directions, but what are your guys' thoughts on how this turned out, at least in Yakima County? We're just going to talk Yakima County on this part right now.
I had to enhance the screen so I could read.
Oh,
Me too.
Here, let me see if I can zoom it in a little bit.
Doing this. Doing
the
Oh yeah, that's
oh, there you go.
there it is.
is that better? There you go. I know you guys are getting old, so sorry.
Fair enough. You know what? I'll tell you the good news here is Republicans are still obviously in a clear majority in this county when you total them up. But the effect of having a bunch of people running, you can see it right in there. And some of them, there's some guys on this list that actually were working a long time and then you had some that kind of just showed up right at the end and didn't put in the time or effort to connect with people, but they're still on the ballot. And again, we're just splitting up votes.
Yeah. I mean, I look at like Jared Sessler actually announced his campaign, gosh, probably in June of last year or something like that. I mean, a long time ago. Even Brad Clippert is another guy. He was actually the first one, I think, who announced to go against Dan Newhouse. And that was a year plus ago.
Yeah.
So trying to see in those turnouts. I mean, it's interesting to see Corry pull 7%. He was relatively the newest person into that race next to I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy's name. Jacek Kobe something like that. So it's an interesting turnout there. Again, though, I think this is what we've got. We've split so many different ways. We can't. It's hard to know who really is the best candidate here.
I find this so annoying to look at this because it's like if you add up the, take out Newhouse, take out Doug White, it's like 46% that was split between the other 5 or 6 candidates. So our numbers are there. We just aren't as smart as the Democrats apparently to just get behind one person. It's just annoying. It's like we could have totally put someone else in that spot, but we decided to split it. It's annoying.
All right, let's go to the next one. So this is the other Secretary of State race. This is just in Yakima. I'm going to see if I can. Well, so in Yakima, the turnout was 28,000 votes here for this race, and it looks like very similar to the other one. We have a lot of Republicans.
And well, and some who I honestly had never heard of until I saw their name on the ballot.
Yeah.
Which, I know it's like Bob. Like I don't remember him coming out, like, meeting with people, and maybe I missed it. But you've got, Mark Milosha showed up, and I know both Mark and Keith Wagner, both are, good principled conservatives. But again, no coordination, no, sort of understanding of who should run and why. And we end up splitting it up. And I'm polling while you guys are talking about that. I'll pull the, just give everybody the statewide results for this one.
Yeah. I mean, like Julie Anderson, who's a nonpartisan, who she is. I couldn't figure out. When I saw the results, I was like, oh, independent. Who is this person? Because she's actually in second right now across the state.
Yes, she is at 13 point. She's at 13.05. Obviously, Steve Hobbs is currently in the lead with 40 in the state. But Keith Wagner, who was the first person into the race and was running since last year on it, is trailing by about 14,000 votes. And there are several other Republicans that if they were, consolidated together, would have easily put him, if they were all around Keith, put him in second place.
Yeah, I mean, if you just take out even just Yakima County votes, I mean, if you take out Tamborine, Bob Hagelin's votes, and Mark's, I mean, you almost have the difference there in just Yakima County if they all voted for Keith.
Question for you guys. So we have Hobbs and Tiggs who are both for the Democrat Party, but it seems like everyone rallied around Hobbs, right? So was there discussion amongst, like, how did they all figure that out to go for the one? Because there they had two that you would think would be split.
So Steve was the appointed Secretary of State after Kim Wyman left to go do election security for the Biden administration. And that was, there's a lot of politics behind that. Steve was a more moderate Democrat in terms of who we have now over there, and was kind of typically in the way of some of Inslee's more insane policies. So it was a quote unquote way to get rid of him. And that's not a secret. It's been a pretty open discussion amongst people in Olympia. But what's interesting is that the party was able to get around him instead of having somebody else. I would assume this Tiggs person who ran kind of was, went off on their own, but the party themselves really rallied behind Steve as the incumbent Secretary of State person. So I think that's where,
all right, let's move on. So this one's pretty easy. There was no competitor for old Judy, Tom Dent,
Or
or
Alex.
Alex. And then look at this
That
is
guy.
this guy, Chris Corry. You did pretty well, man.
The highest I've done. I hope that trend stays true in the general, but again, there's power. There's power in party politics, right? I would think that if my opponent had ran as a Democrat, even though a lot of Democrats don't want to run as Democrats this year, I would imagine her numbers probably would have been higher, because you can actually go into the details, not on this file, but there's another one where you can see over and under votes, and undervotes means somebody just skips it entirely. So typically when I see people skipping that, it's because there wasn't a Democrat on there.
What
in
do
my
you
opinion.
typically, in your last elections, where have you been? Not at 70%, right? It's been like 60, 65, 60.
But remember, the districts changed this year.
That's true.
So my district changed. I got Sela, lost Skamania, so that was a little bit of a change because I had some interesting pockets down in Skamania County that were like Portland suburbs. And I obviously surprisingly did not do as well with the Portland suburb people.
I don't know why.
Badge of honor. I'll take that every day. But yeah, so the numbers looked good. And also I've been campaigning, and similar in this race, right? You have my seatmate Gina, and you have Liz, who's ran many times for many different things under many different party names. And then Chris, who is quote unquote independent. Ironically, his wife ran against me 2 years ago as a Democrat, but again, there's power in, I think, the being having an R versus a D on your name. It allows people to quickly categorize you for good or bad.
Right. And, especially for folks that might not be as connected politically speaking, or paying attention per se. Although if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably paying attention.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention, like having that Republican or Democrat on the ballot tends to help you understand, okay, I'm going to vote Republican or I'm going to vote Democrat. That just kind of helps you. So a lot of people get votes literally just for that.
Oh yeah.
All right. This is another one. District 15, State Senator Nikki Torres. I'm not sure if the write-in actually it looks like the write-in has enough votes maybe to move forward. I don't know.
I haven't heard officially on Nikki. I know I heard on Amanda's qualified, but because Nikki spans over multiple counties, you'd have to look at those and compare them. But I would imagine that they'll make it through. I find this one interesting, right? Because the whole point of the 15th district was around creating a majority minority district. So we end up having only one person run as a Republican, as a Latina. And then Doug White's campaign manager apparently doesn't like that. So she's running as a write-in. So.
Right.
Sorry. Do with that what you will.
Yeah. Who is not a Latina, by the way. So if we move down, Bruce Chandler, incumbent, that's pretty, that's a pretty good win for going against write-in. So Brian Sandlin, same deal. Sesser, it's pretty easy when you don't have a competitor.
Yeah, no kidding. And obviously Charles, well known, well liked in our valley.
Yeah. This one's interesting. Clerk. So now we're getting into straight county stuff here. So right now it looks like it's going to be Misha and Billy fighting it out in the general and fighting for those Deborah votes, right? To see where those are going to split and more. Obviously there'll be higher turnout hopefully in the general. So it's an interesting one. But if you look at it, I mean, Misha's holding like a 800 vote lead right now. It's still kind of tight.
Yeah. Well, we've got 7,000 votes actually that should be dropping any moment now.
Right.
This is on a Friday at 3:30. So, sorry.
Yeah. So So far it's Misha and Billy. We'll keep an eye on that one. Coroner. This one surprised the heck out of me on election night. I know Jim Curtis has been well liked. He's the incumbent. But I did not realize he was that well liked going against Marshall. I mean, that was a big wallop. If I'm the other guy, I'm going, man, I don't even know where to go from here.
Yeah, no, I think Jim's done a good job. I actually got to spend a lot of time on the campaign trail with him when he was running first in 2018, and got to know him and his family. And he's just a stand-up guy. I can see why the community likes him so much. I mean, especially you're the coroner, right? I mean, that's a pretty interesting state or a county elected position. But he's done a good job. He's taken the job very seriously. He's gone in and got advanced certifications to help, propel the office forward. And I think that people recognize that.
Yep. Joe Brusick, pretty simple there. Udell, Sheriff, pretty simple there. Even Eileen, same thing. Moving into this one, so District 1, so it has been announced that District 1, Amanda now has a competitor, and her name is Angie Gerard. We're actually hoping sometime before the general to actually hold virtual debates with all of these commissioner candidates right on here.
No, that'd be awesome.
On Accurate Perspective. So we'll get to have Angie on with Amanda, hopefully, and kind of see where they're at. But Amanda did well, obviously, as the only Republican on there. So this goes back to what we were talking about. If you look at these things where we have one Republican, they're showing out pretty good.
Yep.
So someone asked me too the other day. So if you have two Republicans running and it's just the two Republicans, do you feel as bad about splitting that vote? And I said, no, because it's just two Republicans.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, I don't. All right, this is another interesting one. District 2, we were trying to figure this race out for a long time, but it's looking pretty strong for Kyle here.
Yeah, no, I thought that this one was going to be a lot closer than it was. Thankfully, I think it's looking good, and I've kind of been talking with Kyle and following what's going on there, and he's been knocking on doors and meeting people. And in a district-wide race, that's what you really need to do to connect with people.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked at how far ahead he is on this race, because this district, it's a newer district. It's just been written, because of the lawsuit. And when you pull the voting data that's actually in District 2, it's a pretty dominant Dem district, voting base wise. So it's interesting to see Kyle pulling, almost 56% of that vote. So
Yeah.
all right, moving on to District 3. This one's, still kind of tight, but again, Steve Saunders launched only 2.5 months ago, and I feel like poor Lindy has had to run for his spot like every year for the last 10 years, it feels like. But but he is on it again, and he's got a new challenger in Saunders, who has only been at the scene for two months. So it's a race to keep watching as we get into the general.
Absolutely.
Because I think so. Last year's primary with Lindy and Autumn Torres, this was a very similar vote turnout, total wise and actually percentage wise. Autumn, I think, ended up pulling within about 300 votes or so by the primary, and then on general night, actually on the night of election of general, Autumn was down 1,900 votes and came within 66. So very interesting to keep an eye on this race to see where this turns out. So fire protection district, that's about there. And we had a whole bunch of PCO races, but it's just a lot for people.
I don't think we need to break those down.
No. The
PCO hot takes is for subscribers only, right?
Yeah, that's it. They're special. Let's
Behind
see.
the paywall.
Yep. All right. Well, we do have with the state part. Let me look at the Washington State election results real quick, because there's a couple there that I want to show. One is the senator race. If I can actually find the right buttons here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
while you're doing that, I've been refreshing Yakima County's election site, trying to see if they've got their updated numbers, because they're supposed to post at 3:30.
Yeah, you keep us posted on that one.
I'm trying.
All right, so this Secretary of State race for the entire state. So as of right now, we've got almost 1.5 million votes in, and as we were talking earlier, you've got an independent pretty far ahead um, in second, and then the incumbent. So it's an interesting one that the Republicans again kind of split themselves right out of the whole picture here. Unfortunate because Republicans have held this seat a long time.
Yep. The last 3 secretaries of state, I believe, were all Republican.
Yep. So if we go over to the federal race, so this is that CD4 race, if it'll click. Again, looking at it from a whole state perspective here, right now you've got Doug White actually gaining on Dan Newhouse, and then Culp is pulling third, but he's pulling further away from Doug White. So I'm not sure if that's going to trend in his favor or not. But all the other guys, again, though, if you start adding them up, like what Lindsay was saying, it's all the votes needed to actually primary Dan Newhouse out, but did not happen. And then the last one I wanted to look at with you guys is the hotly debated CD3.
Yeah, this one is crazy close.
Yeah, so Joe Kent has been making a huge comeback here. He was about 6,000 votes back on the first ballot drop, and now he's within 2,000 votes, and there's still a ton of ballots left to count in that race, and he's been gaining ground every single day. So he could primary the incumbent Jamie right out of this spot, which would be the whole purpose why he jumped into this, was to take Jamie out. So if he ends up pulling that off, there was a ton of money pushed into this race, and you can't even see it. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. There was a ton of money, especially in the last 2 weeks, pumped into this to go after Kent. So yeah. Any updates yet on the county there, Chris?
We got more updates right now. They just dropped a bunch of ballots. The trends are all holding. It looks like a bunch more Republican ballots came in because I gained up about a 0.5 percentage point, which is very unusual when the trickle in comes. So Republicans, turn your ballot in earlier.
On the PDF?
I'm on the county PDF. Yeah, the county PDF, because what happens is, so if you're ever curious, you can talk to the Yakima County Elections Office or Charles Ross, the auditor. The systems are actually, they're linked, but they're disconnected. So when they're actually tabulating ballots, that system is not connected to anything more broad, and then they actually get the reports out, and the reports are put into and then uploaded to the Secretary of State stuff. So the PDF report is usually the quicker report to see returns than waiting on the Secretary of State's website, because there's a delay. But it does show that Angie Gerard's on there.
Lindsay's on there for the 15th.
Yeah,
I'm scrolling through right now.
So
but it looks like Misha's pulling further ahead in the clerk race. So, or not ahead, but from her competitor, Deborah.
Yeah.
Jim Curtis got another percentage point up. And let's see. Kyle's pulling in some votes, man. You guys can all see this, right? Oh, no, you can't.
No. I'm looking at it too.
No. Hold on, guys.
See, the state numbers still haven't been tabulated yet.
No,
it hasn't pulled forward. Yeah, so again, more ballots. Yeah, it's trending. It's looking good. I just wish we did this Tuesday night, people, so that I could lose less hair.
Well, give us less candidates to choose from, okay?
All right.
That's what we got to work on. The one race I wanted to show you guys on PCO, which I just thought was hilarious. Oh, it's changed now. She only had one vote up, and she it's been a tight neck and neck on PCO 155. So,
Oh wow.
anyways, it's been kind of fun to watch these little PCO races. So, all right, guys, you got anything else for the good of the order? I think we've.
Well, I'm gonna shamelessly thank everybody who watches this show that supported me. I appreciate it. It means a lot. As Lindsay has seen, and I know Matt obviously knows, when you're unelected and when you're a candidate, it's not just you, it's your family, it's all the people that support you. I mean, that makes a huge difference. And I don't know if I would do this if I knew I didn't have the people backing me that are just like, we believe in you, we want you to do a good job. So thank you so much for those votes. It really does mean a lot.
Absolutely. And, it'll be fun to watch this over the next coming months going into November, kind of see where we're at. Obviously, Chris is, he can kind of breathe a little bit, but you still got to do, you got a lot of work still to do, Chris.
So I've got work to do in the district, obviously, but my job, I also help out on the campaign side. And my job now is to go pick up more Republican seats because I want more colleagues in Olympia. More colleagues equals less headaches for the whole state.
More help.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Thank you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. So to end the show, I just want to talk about our last show sponsor, which is Center for Self-Governance. And you can find them at centerforselfgovernance.com. Go check them out. They have classes happening all the time. And if you haven't taken it, do it. There's a ton of awesome classes. If you're thinking about running for school board or city or county or any of those, you want to check those classes out because it will definitely help prepare you for what you're signing up for or not signing up for. You might go, nope, don't want to do that either. But definitely check it out. And then the other thing is you can find us on all of your different podcast areas on Anchor, Spotify, Google, iTunes, all of them. You can find us on there. And now, guys, also we're now on Rumble. I've had a lot of people ask us if we're on Rumble, and we are. So check us out on there. And then if you'd like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/accurate perspective and join as a Patreon. And if you're a candidate out there and want to actually pay for a spot in our show, you can do so as well. There's a tier on there. It's super cheap. It's probably the cheapest campaign advertising you'll get. It's $30 a month. It's cheap time. So you can get it on here and we'll be glad to advertise you. All right. And everybody, we will see you again soon. Again, we'll be looking for our virtual debates that we're trying to set up between the county commissioners. That'll be coming up in the next couple months. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.